All right, one more education question, then we'll jump to something else. I'll get it back to Terry Bonoff, your opponent. What's your, in 281, we had a couple referendum fights. The community's real divided on the district. I've been told I'm part of that division, though I can't imagine why. Um, she's I have to bring this up because I've been talking about it all year. She sponsored a bill in the Senate that would basically allow a school board to continue a referendum without a public vote. Even though the referendum is sunsetted, she wanted to end that sunset without the public vote. What are your feelings on that? And on referendums, generally speaking, I mean, are they a good thing, a bad thing? Should the district have to go back and justify their costs and get community support, open that communication, all that fun stuff?
Well, I definitely think that referenda should be subject to a taxpayer vote, whether you're going to extend it or create it, because I think the corollary to that statement is then they can just tax whenever they want to, and there's nothing to hold them accountable. So I would not be supportive of that at all.
Here, here. Okay. Okay, well, let me throw a little curveball out here. You mentioned the budget and the formulas and all that. I live in Crystal. In Crystal, we get a lot of local government aid. It's a big thing. All they do is whine and moan that they don't get more. It's city council meeting is kind of pathetic. Local government aid is another one of those formulas that's about 45 years old. I think Wendell Anderson was the governor when we created local government aid, which was before I was born. How do we get cities to either be more independent or spend the money what it was intended to be spent for? So it's not just this merry-go-round of St. Paul taking the money and trying to. It just is an issue that frustrates me to death.
Well,
what do you think about that issue?
I think your latter point is a very important one. You know, the intent of local government aid was to be able to help smaller communities, townships who did not perhaps have the right tax base or, their own local economies of scale to be able to afford some of the public services so that they could provide that basic public safety that is constitutionally mandated. Let's get back to that. If you're going to have local government aid, then it should be, meeting those constitutional obligations of the state to the localities. I think, unfortunately, like you say, that may become a little more of a job for citizens. I talk about accountable government throughout my campaign, and we have had a system where we have pushed our focus on governance up. I door knock and I have people who say, I don't really pay attention to local politics, I am really focused on the federal level. That is completely inverted from where our founders had intended our government to be. Our focus should be on our city councils, our county councils, on our school boards. And so that may be a little bit more for people like you and your cable show here to bring that focus onto your city council. If you're receiving local government aid for fire and police and those basic protective services, that should not be freeing up money for the city to be spending on perhaps some very non-discretionary spending that benefits a select few here in the city.
Yeah, I don't think the city of Crystal likes me too much. They've started my show a few times. So, it's just another issue where it just kind of reminds me of the school districts a lot, where the finger gets pointed to another form of government, but I never hear a great solution to it.
Right, and that is, you go back to accountability with that. If you don't have the money for your fire or for your police services and you can point the finger at St. Paul, it definitely removes some of the blame or the accountability where it belongs. The one other thing I wanted to mention about local government aid is it sometimes gets into this keeping up with the Joneses sort of mentality. Not every city here in the state needs an ice rink or a civic center or an amphitheater. I think that sometimes they contribute to our quality of life, but to use state money to pay for local projects like that, somebody, now Plymouth and Minnetonka, neither one of the major cities in my district receive LGA. Local government aid. So we are funding, projects, whether it's Crystal or St. Paul, the Iron Range, wherever they are around the state. Our citizens are funding projects that will never be used. I don't think that anybody would have a problem with paying for police and fire protection, ambulance services, and so on. But to perhaps pay for a dog park somewhere else they're never going to be able to use, you may have people questioning the logic of the spending.